When I was younger, I once saved a beggar. That moment of kindness led to him becoming our family's hidden guard, entrusted with my protection. Yet no matter what, he always put my elder sister first. I didn't mind at first, not until the day my sister and I encountered bandits. He made a choice that changed my life forever. "I'll take your elder sister to safety first," he said. "She's delicate. I'll come back for you right after." I believed him. I waited and waited. But he never came back. Instead, the bandits found me. They violated me, destroyed me, and when they were done, they hung my broken body on the stockade wall like some grotesque trophy. But then, I woke up. My eyes opened, and I realized I'd gone back in time, back to the moment when my father asked me to choose a hidden guard. This time, I pointed to the young man standing beside him, ensuring my fate would not repeat itself. Everything seemed to change, but fate has a cruel sense of humor. On the day of my coming-of-age ceremony, my sister begged me to accompany her outside. I agreed, only for us to once again cross paths with bandits. My sister's hidden guard was mysteriously absent, leaving only my personal guard, Christopher. Panic took over when he shoved me into a corner and whispered urgently, "Angelina, hide here. Your elder sister is in poor health. I'll take her to safety first and then come back for you." "No." I grabbed his arm desperately. "Take me with you. My sister will be fine, but if you leave me here, I'll die." His gaze turned cold, filled with disgust. "How can you say something so malicious? Stay here. I'll come back for you." I watched in despair as he fought his way to my sister, cradling her in his arms and carrying her away. My sister, who should have been unconscious, smirked at me the moment he wasn't looking. Her lips curled with triumph, and she whispered, "I win again." My heart sank as I realized the truth. The bandits were her doing. She had orchestrated all of it to eliminate me. I huddled in a broken basket, trembling as the sun set. Darkness crept in, and with it came the bandits. Their malicious grins surrounded me as they closed in. "No, please, no," I screamed. But then I woke up, gasping for air, drenched in cold sweat. My chest heaved and I stared at my hands. They were intact, unmarred. Kali, my maid, rushed in. "Miss, what's wrong? Another nightmare?" I nodded, my breath still ragged. The nightmares of my previous life clung to me like a shadow, suffocating and relentless. Yet deep down, I reminded myself, God had given me another chance. I would not waste it. I dismissed Kali and lay back down, but sleep eluded me. Memories of betrayal and pain haunted me until dawn. The next morning, my father summoned me to the front hall. As I entered, I saw her, my elder sister. She glanced at me briefly before looking away with feigned indifference. Everyone in the capital speaks of the Prime Minister's 2 daughters. My sister, the elder, is celebrated for her beauty, her every smile enough to captivate the masses. She's a paragon of grace, skilled in music, chess, calligraphy, and painting. And me? I'm the forgotten one. But this time, I won't let her take everything from me. Not again. At the spring hunt not long ago, with just one graceful water sleeve dance, my elder sister captured the attention of the crown prince. His admiration was so immediate and deep that he requested her hand in marriage on the spot. The entire capital buzzed with envy at her fortune. And me, the younger daughter? People hesitate when asked about me. "She's lucky," they mutter awkwardly, as if my only redeeming quality is being born into the prestigious Prime Minister's family. I am that so-called lucky younger daughter. Since childhood, I've known I can never compare to my elder sister. Even our names tell the story. She is Anaya, a name as beautiful and cherished as she is. I am Angelina, the shadow trailing behind her light. My birth was an accident. My mother endured great hardship bringing Anaya into the world, and my father had no intention of having more children. Yet, fate had other plans. When I was born, my mother died in childbirth. My father, devastated and heartbroken, blamed me for her death. He's never looked at me with love. To him, I am the reason for his pain, a constant reminder of his loss. And though my elder sister is adored by everyone, her affection for me is a facade. When others are around, she's the doting sibling. But when no one is watching, she shows her true colors. I've felt the sharp sting of her silver needles, carefully hidden in places no one else would notice. I've endured her whispers, her venomous words slicing through me. You shouldn't have been born. If it weren't for you, I would be the only child in this family, the only one loved. If it weren't for you, Mother would still be alive. Everything is your fault. And perhaps she's right. I used to think so too. But there was one person who didn't blame me. My mother's nurse. She held me lovingly in her arms when no one else would. Miss, she said gently, Madame never blamed you. You are the precious pearl she gave her life to protect. Don't ever think otherwise. I didn't understand much at the time, but for the first time, I cried freely in her arms. After that, I often sought her out, clinging to her comfort. She would tell me stories about my mother, teach me poetry, and help me learn my letters, until the day she was gone. I found her covered with a white cloth, her body lifeless. They said she had taken her own life, overcome with grief for my mother. My sister leaned close to me then, her lips brushing my ear as she whispered coldly, She cared about you too much. She deserved to die. Her words froze me to my core. I felt as if I had been plunged into an endless winter, trembling and powerless. Angelina. Anaya's voice snapped me out of my thoughts. I looked at her, startled. She was smiling softly, her tone sweet and tender, but I knew better than to trust her facade. Father says he wants to choose hidden guards to protect us, she said. You're younger, so you should choose first. It was only then I noticed the large group of people kneeling before us, awaiting our decision. My gaze instinctively landed on Christopher, the boy I once trusted, who once abandoned me to my fate. He met my eyes, his expression unreadable. But before he could say anything, Anaya noticed my glance. Does my younger sister like that hidden guard? She asked with a sly smile. No. I shook my head quickly, tearing my gaze away from Christopher. I could feel his incredulous stare, but I didn't waver. Instead, I raised my finger and pointed at the young man kneeling next to him. I want him. Christopher's shock was palpable, but I didn't stop. Father, I said, steadying my voice. I only need one hidden guard, and it will be him. The rest can all protect my elder sister. My father raised an eyebrow, surprised by my request. Why? I smiled faintly. Elder sister is already the crown princess, chosen by the emperor himself. She will face jealousy and schemes from other families. It's better to have more people around her to ensure her safety. This time, I would not stand in Christopher's way. I would let him protect the person he truly wanted. Perhaps then he would stop hating me. My father seemed stunned for a moment before nodding. Do as you say. You're very thoughtful. He paused, then added, At the banquet tonight, Anaya will sit with the crown prince. You will sit with me. I smiled faintly, but inside my heart felt hollow. Even now, I couldn't shake the memories of the life I had lost, the life I had suffered. But this time, I would take control of my fate. I was stunned. In my previous life, nothing like this had ever happened. Anaya turned to me, her gaze unwavering and smiled sweetly. "Angelina is truly my good younger sister. You're so considerate of me." "Thank you, younger sister." Her words were honeyed, but I could feel the sharp thorns beneath them. I didn't want to stay any longer, so I quickly made up an excuse and returned to my courtyard. Only when I was alone did I finally exhale, relief flooding my chest. Quietly, I whispered to myself, "Angelina, well done." A soft chuckle startled me. Spinning around, I saw the hidden guard I had just chosen standing a few paces away, his smile faint but noticeable. I frowned, annoyed. "Why are you so silent when you walk?" He shrugged casually. "Walking without making a sound is a basic skill for hidden guards." I had no response to that, and could only glare at him. His gaze lingered on me, his tone light but probing. The second miss seems to not like the eldest miss very much. My heart skipped a beat. I turned away, scolding sharply. "What nonsense are you spouting? My elder sister treats me very well. Why wouldn't I like her?" He didn't look convinced, but his expression remained carefree. Whatever the second miss says is, of course, right. I clenched my fist within my sleeves, irritation prickling under my skin. "Why are you following me? Shouldn't you be hiding somewhere out of sight to protect me?" He glanced around, his smile deepening. "There's no one here. Why should I hide?" His nonchalance reminded me of Christopher, the hidden guard I had chosen in my previous life. Back then, he was always nowhere to be found when I needed him most. Only when I stood beside my elder sister would he appear, vigilant and loyal. Not to me, but to her. Thankfully, in this life, I had severed those ties. No more Christopher, no more misery, no more dying in despair. For the first time, I felt a sliver of hope. I looked at the young man standing before me. "What's your name?" "Israel," he said simply. It was a nice name, I thought to myself. The day of the banquet arrived, and Anaya sent me a dress. It was garish, a riot of colors that clashed horribly, as though it had been dipped into every dye vat imaginable. One glance was enough. I turned away and chose a simple lotus-colored dress from my wardrobe instead. When Anaya saw me, her eyes flashed with malice, though her voice was soft and sweet. "Younger sister, this is the Emperor's banquet. Why are you dressed so plainly? I even prepared a beautiful dress for you. Do you dislike it?" Father frowned at my attire, his tone sharp. "Why are you dressed like this? Do you want others to think the Prime Minister's mansion mistreats you?" I curtsied, keeping my voice steady. "Daughter wouldn't dare. It's just that this is the first banquet since my elder sister was designated the crown princess. Naturally, my elder sister should dress in splendor to match her status. If I were to dress too brightly, it might seem as though our family is flaunting its fortune. A simpler dress is more appropriate." Father studied me for a moment before, nodding. "You're thoughtful, Angelina." It was the first time he had addressed me by name, and the unfamiliar warmth of it left me momentarily stunned. At the banquet, I sat beside my father, while Anaya was at the crown prince's side. Their conversation flowed effortlessly, moving, from courtly matters I didn't understand to compliments exchanged between them. Eventually, the topic shifted to me. "The Prime Minister's eldest daughter is remarkable. Surely the younger daughter must be equally talented." All eyes turned to me. My fingers froze over the pastry I had been nibbling. I didn't know whether to continue eating or set it down. Even the Emperor, sitting regally in his bright yellow robes, looked at me with interest. Before I could speak, my father interjected. "My younger daughter is not skilled in anything particular. I ask for your Majesty's understanding." But the one who had brought up the topic, a woman whose father was an enemy of mine in court, persisted with a sly smile. How could that be? Surely there must be something she excels at. thought for a moment, then rose and saluted the Emperor. Your Majesty, I have no extraordinary talents, but I do have one thing I'm particularly good at, eating pastries. Shall I demonstrate? Before anyone could respond, I grabbed the plate of pastries in front of me and began stuffing them into my mouth, one after another. The sweet and flaky crusts filled my cheeks until I resembled a puffer fish. The banquet hall erupted into laughter. The Emperor himself chuckled heartily, while the imperial consort hid her smile behind a delicate sleeve. Your Majesty, she said, still laughing. This young lady is truly amusing. You must reward her. The Emperor waved his hand, his voice filled with mirth. The Prime Minister's younger daughter is indeed interesting. Confer her the title of County Princess. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Anaya's delicate smile falter, the faintest twitch of fury distorting her features. I lowered my gaze, feigning innocence, though my stomach churned from the sheer number of pastries I had consumed. Feigning the need to visit the restroom, I excused myself from the hall and stepped into the cool evening breeze of the imperial garden. The tranquility of the night soothed me, and on a whim, I called out softly, Israel, are you there? He appeared seemingly out of nowhere, his presence quiet but steady. Is the second miss looking for me? This time, I wasn't startled. Instead, I asked curiously, were you in the banquet hall just now? Where were you hiding? His lips curled into a mysterious smile. That, second miss, is the secret of hidden guards. Naturally, I cannot tell you. I shook my head, half annoyed, half amused. For the first time in a long while, I felt a flicker of light pierce through the heavy shadows of my heart. Before I could say anything, a voice I knew all too well called my name. Angelina. I looked up, and there he was, Christopher. My chest tightened. How dare he? My name wasn't something a hidden guard could address so casually. His eyes burned with emotion, and his voice carried a rough edge, like he was barely holding himself together. You should have chosen me. Why didn't you choose me? My breath hitched, and my pupils contracted. How did he know? Could it be he had also come back? The thought sent a violent tremor through my body. My chest constricted as memories of him leaving me behind, abandoning me to my fate, surged to the surface. Without thinking, I reached out and clutched Israel's sleeve, the closest anchor I had in that moment. Israel glanced down at my hand, and then positioned himself in front of me, shielding me from Christopher's piercing gaze. His voice was calm, but cold. Christopher, each hidden guard serves their master. Does the eldest miss know you're here, looking for the second miss? She chose me. What nonsense are you spewing now? Christopher's stare bore into me, unrelenting. But Israel stepped closer, his tone firm. If you take another step forward, don't blame me for being unkind. I kept my head down, unable to meet Christopher's gaze. The weight of his presence pressed on me, suffocating. Gently, I tugged on Israel's sleeve, my voice barely above a whisper. I don't want to stay here anymore. Let's go. Israel didn't hesitate. He turned with me, and I clung to him as we walked quickly away, desperate to put as much distance between Christopher and myself as possible. My feet moved fast, too fast, and I wasn't paying attention to where I was going. Suddenly, Israel stopped and I stumbled, falling against him. Second miss, he said, a faint smile in his voice as he steadied me. You should pay attention to the road. His calmness shattered something inside me. The memories, the humiliation, the betrayals, the pain, all came rushing back at once. My body stiffened as my vision blurred with tears. I couldn't stop them, no matter how hard I tried. They spilled over, hot and bitter, as I whispered, No. Please, no. Don't. Don't. Israel let go of me immediately, his voice filled with worry as he crouched to meet my eyes. Second, miss, what's wrong? Don't scare me like this. I stared at him through the haze of my tears. His face, illuminated by the moonlight, was full of concern, so different from the faces of those who had betrayed me before. In that moment, he felt like a lifeline, fragile, but within reach. My trembling fingers clutched the corner of his clothing. Israel, will you always protect me? Will you always be good to me? He didn't seem to understand the depth of my plea, but he nodded solemnly, humoring me. Yes, I will protect the second miss with my life. I will be good to her. But those words, they echoed too much like Christopher's empty promises in my past life. My heart twisted painfully, and I forced a bitter smile. No, I said firmly, just protect me. Don't be good to me. Otherwise, you'll die. Israel's gaze locked onto mine, unwavering. Then, to my shock, he knelt on one knee, his right hand over his heart. His voice was steady, yet solemn. From the moment I became second Mrs. Hidden Guard, my life has belonged to you. I will protect you with my life. I swear it. Under the silvery glow of the moonlight, I felt my heart skip a beat. He was the second person in my life who had ever promised to protect me so earnestly. The first being the nanny who had served my mother. The next morning, I learned that Anaya had discovered Christopher's late-night visit to me. She made him kneel through the night, and by dawn, she was whipping him in the courtyard. As I passed by on my way out, I overheard her commanding the servants to lash him harder. Her voice was laced with scorn. A hidden guard deserting his post? He deserves to be punished. If you tell me where you went last night, I might consider sparing your life. I clenched my fists beneath my wide sleeves, forcing myself to walk past them without looking at the bloody scene. My gaze fixed straight ahead, and I didn't falter. Behind me, I heard Anaya sneer. Look at you, so eager to express loyalty, yet she doesn't even spare you a glance. I sighed inwardly. Christopher's loyalty was never mine to claim. His heart had always been with Anaya. Later that day, I returned to my courtyard to find that my maidservant, Kali, was gone. In her place stood a stranger. Miss, I will be serving you from now on. My brows furrowed. Where's Kali? Before the stranger could answer, Anaya swept into my room, her voice loud and cruel. That lowly servant girl had an affair with a hidden guard. She has been executed. My heart stopped. What? Anaya's expression was smug as she approached me, her eyes gleaming with malice. But since she served you for so many years, I was kind enough to leave her a whole body. She leaned in closer and whispered, her voice dripping venom. I told you before, didn't I? Anyone who's good to you should die. You were born to be trampled into the mud by me. Her words cut deep, but what hurt even more was the indifference I faced when I turned to my father for help. He merely glanced up from his book and said coldly, Your elder sister is right. Servants like that are better off gone. Kali's lifeless body was left in a corner of the courtyard, her bruises stark against her pale skin, a deep strangulation mark wrapped around her neck. Her small face, once so full of life, was now frozen in cold, unfeeling stillness. I knelt beside her, brushing my fingers over her cheek. It was colder than the winter wind. My voice trembled as I whispered, How much pain must she have been in when she died? Israel appeared beside me, his presence silent but steady. Second miss, he said softly, if you want to cry, just cry. It'll make you feel better. But crying wouldn't bring her back. Nothing would. I don't understand why, no matter how hard I try to avoid them. They refuse to let me go. All I want is to live a simple, peaceful life. Is that too much to ask? I didn't sleep at all that night. My mind was tangled in memories and thoughts. And by dawn, when the sky began to lighten, I finally spoke to Israel, who stood silently on the roof beam like a shadow guarding me. Israel, I said softly, I don't want to be the fish anymore. Will you help me become the chopping board and the knife, the one that kills the fish? For a long time there was only silence. Then, his steady voice answered, As you command. From that day on, I threw myself into studying with everything I had. I was no longer the girl who sought to blend into the background. Every page I read, every lesson I memorized, was another step forward. Even the serious nanny, who rarely smiled, seemed to notice. One day, she looked at me with a hint of approval and asked, You have talent. Have you read many books or practiced calligraphy before? I smiled, embarrassed. I've recited lessons for women many times, but other books I've only skimmed. I never studied them seriously. She raised an eyebrow. And why not? Her question struck a chord of disappointment in me. I hesitated before replying. I'm not as intelligent as my elder sister. Father always said, a woman without talent is virtuous. So I thought there was no need to study. Do you want to learn? She asked, her tone curious. I nodded vigorously. Of course I do. I want to be as powerful as my elder sister. Her lips curved into a faint smile, and that smile gave me hope. Not long after, a decree came from the county princess, accompanied by an invitation from the imperial concubine for me to enter the palace as her companion. The news must have hit Anaya hard because I heard she smashed every piece of porcelain in her room that day. When I returned home, Father's expression was complicated. He looked at me, his gaze heavy with something unspoken, but he said nothing. As he left, Anaya stormed in, her eyes cold as she sneered at me. I underestimated you, she hissed. I didn't expect you to latch onto someone as powerful as the imperial concubine. I frowned, confused. What are you talking about? Elder sister? I don't understand. She snorted, her tone dripping with disdain. Whether you truly don't understand or are just pretending, don't think hiding in the palace will protect you. Just wait and see. With that, she turned and left in anger. I shook my head. No matter how far I went, her hatred would follow. Me. That night, Christopher appeared in my courtyard again, uninvited as always. His injuries hadn't healed, his face was pale, and he knelt on the ground before me. I didn't reveal it was you, he said hurriedly, his voice trembling. I didn't mention Kali's name either. I looked at him with a calmness that surprised even me. What's the use of that now? If it weren't for you, Anaya wouldn't have killed Kali so cruelly. She grew up with me. Do you even understand what you've taken from me? His pale face seemed to lose even more color as I continued, my voice steady but icy. Christopher, I'm entering the palace soon. Do you know how happy that makes me? Finally, I won't have to see you or any of them ever again. His lips parted as if to speak, but I didn't stay to listen. I turned and left, my heart heavier than before. The day I left for the palace, Father accompanied me to the gates. His parting words were formal and detached. Be cautious in speech and behavior. Don't disgrace the Prime Minister's mansion. I stared at him, the weight of years of silence and neglect crashing down on me. For the first time, I let my defiance show. Father, I said, my voice trembling. I'm your child too. Why is it so hard for you to say, take care of yourself? He didn't reply, but I didn't stop. The words spilled out, 2 lifetimes worth of bitterness and pain. If you didn't want me, you could have ended it before I was born. A single bowl of safflower tea would have done it. But you didn't. You let me live because you hoped I would be a son. And when I wasn't, I became your disappointment. People in the capital say I'm blessed. But where is the blessing? I lost my mother and never knew fatherly love. You let Anaya do whatever she wanted to me, and you turned a blind eye. Deep down, you must know the truth. You must know that it wasn't me who caused Mother's death, but you convinced yourself it was easier to blame me, to make me the scapegoat for your guilt. And now, even you believe it. Tears slid down my cheeks, but I wiped them away quickly, refusing to let him see my pain. I once thought about joining Mother, ending it all, but her nanny told me something I'll never forget. She said that I was the child Mother looked forward to having, that I was her pearl, meant to shine brightly. I lifted my chin, my voice firm despite the tears. So I will. No matter how much you or anyone else tries to dim my light, I will shine. I left him standing there, silent, as I stepped toward the palace and the unknown future waiting for me. I let out a long breath, the weight of everything pressing on me. Even though Father didn't say it, I understood. The Prime Minister's mansion rises and falls with us. I could reassure him, but there was something I needed to say too. If my elder sister provokes me, then I won't hesitate to cast aside any pretense. With those words, I turned and left. I bowed my head, not daring to meet his eyes. As I climbed into the sedan chair, the tears started to fall, soaking my dress. I whispered softly, knowing Israel was close by. Israel, where is your home? He hesitated before answering, his voice distant. It's a very far place, but there is always a home. I felt the weight of his words. But Israel, I don't have a home anymore. When I arrived at the palace, I went to pay my respects to the imperial concubine. As soon as I knelt, she rose from her seat, taking my hand to help me up. Good child, you must be tired from such a long journey. I answered obediently. Imperial concubine, this subject is not tired. We spoke about family matters, but before long, a maid came with a message. Imperial concubine, His Highness the Prince has come to pay his respects. She nodded. Tell him to come in. A young man entered, his movements steady and graceful. He greeted the imperial concubine with respect. Mother is in good health. The imperial concubine nodded and gestured toward me. This is the county princess. You should have seen her at the banquet. I curtsied. I have seen Seventh Prince. He smiled, his gaze warm. I remember you. You can finish an entire plate of pastries by yourself. I felt my cheeks flush with embarrassment, and the imperial concubine burst out laughing. He added with a teasing smile, If I had known little sister was here, I would have sent 2 boxes of cakes before coming. She laughed so hard she nearly knocked over her tea. After a little more conversation, the imperial concubine excused herself, claiming she was tired. I followed the 7th prince out of the room, about to say my goodbyes, when he raised an eyebrow and smiled. Shall we chat for a moment? I paused, stunned for a second before nodding. Yes, I have something to say to His Highness. He led me to the side hall. After the maid served tea, he looked at me and spoke directly. My mother wants to match you and me. What do you think? I hadn't expected his words and was taken aback. He added, I find you extremely interesting. If I were to marry you, I would be willing. My heart raced, confusion clouding my mind. He seemed to notice my hesitation and smiled faintly. It's okay. Think it over and answer when you're ready. No rush. Didn't you say you had something to tell me? Speak. I took a deep breath, then gave a soft curtsy. What I'm about to say might sound rebellious, but please forgive me, Your Highness. He gave a quiet nod. Speak. I met his gaze firmly. am willing to help your highness achieve your goals." I paused, collecting my thoughts. "In my previous life, I learned about your situation. The emperor was inclined to make you crown prince, but Empress's influence caused the eldest son to be chosen instead. Your rivalry with the crown prince has been whispered about in the streets, and I'm taking a gamble. The emperor's affection for the imperial concubine could change everything." When I finished, I could feel a cold sweat forming on my back, sensing his unwavering gaze. After a long moment, he spoke, his voice low. "You're bold. But who told you all this? Minister Shen?" I shook my head. "It's not from my father. The rumors are all over the streets, and I simply took a risk." He chuckled softly. "Minister, Shen is sharp in politics but blind when it comes to family matters. He favors the one with beauty over the capable." He paused, then said, "Sit down. Let's talk more. How do you plan to help me?" We talked well into the evening. When I finally returned to the quarters the imperial concubine had arranged for me, I was exhausted. Israel suddenly appeared in the doorway. "Does second miss like that seventh prince?" I glanced at his figure in the reflection of the bronze mirror. His tall silhouette was swallowed by the night, his features half hidden. I asked softly, "Curious?" He folded his arms, his gaze unreadable. After a pause, I responded seriously. "I don't like him, but if I must marry, he is my best choice." Israel's figure disappeared before I could say anything more. The next day, the imperial concubine arranged for me to be the companion reader for the seventh prince. She said it would be good for a girl to read more books. When I arrived, I was startled to see Anaya. The moment she saw me, her eyes widened, and she stormed over. "Sister, why are you here? Did you miss me?" But then, she gripped my wrist so tightly that it hurt, whispering urgently, "What are you doing here? Leave, now!" The seventh prince's voice broke through the tension behind me, his calm tone cutting through the silence. "Anaya is overthinking," he said. As her grip on my wrist loosened, I quickly freed myself, and he seized the opportunity to step in front of me, pulling me behind him. I glanced down at my wrist, still feeling the pressure of her hold, and quietly wiped it with my sleeve. Anaya forced a smile, though it was barely there. "So you came with the seventh prince. My sister is really something. Why didn't you tell me?" she asked, her words tinged with an edge. I answered slowly, my voice controlled. "I wanted to tell you, but you didn't give me a chance." Her smile faltered, her composure slipping. The seventh prince spoke with an air of finality. "When you marry the eldest prince, I'll address you accordingly." His voice was sharp, and I could see how little he cared for Anaya's theatrics. His words clearly didn't faze him, yet they shattered the facade Anaya had put up. The people around us murmured quietly, and Anaya's eyes filled with tears. She sobbed softly, turning her gaze towards me. "Could it be someone has told you something?" Her words were sharp, accusing, and I could see the subtle glance she gave me, as though to say I was somehow responsible for her humiliation. The seventh prince sneered, cutting through her insinuations. "So now, you suspect your own sister?" Anaya's sobs only deepened, her voice shaking. "Your Highness, you've misunderstood me." But the seventh prince didn't offer any comfort. He simply led me to a seat, and as I sat beside him, I whispered softly, "Thank you." He gave me a brief but intense look, saying nothing, as if the moment didn't deserve a response. When the crown prince arrived, he immediately noticed Anaya's tears rushing over to her. "What's wrong? Your crying is breaking my heart. Who bullied you?" Anaya glanced our way, shaking her head, trying to suppress her sobs. "It's nothing," she murmured. "When I saw my sister, I was so happy that I cried." The Crown Prince paused, seemingly thoughtful. So, you're Anaya's sister. His gaze shifted over to me with something uncomfortable in it, as though he didn't like what he saw. Before I could respond, he scoffed. Is it appropriate for the 7th prince to bring a woman to class? Just because she's a little beautiful, has she bewitched you? I could feel Anaya's rage building as her face turned pale with anger. The 7th prince remained calm, his demeanor unaffected. Big brother is joking, he said smoothly. This is my companion reader chosen for me by mother. She is also a county princess, appointed by father. Anaya quickly wiped her tears and tried to play the role of the loving sister. Your Highness, no one bullied me. It's just that I was so happy to see my sister. The Crown Prince seemed satisfied with her explanation and glanced back at me one last time before the teacher arrived, signaling the start of class. By the time class ended, my head was spinning. I packed my things and stood up to leave with the 7th prince when the Crown Prince stopped me. I heard the younger daughter of the Shen family is excellent at eating pastries, he said with a sly smile. Why don't you perform for us today? Before I could protest, servants brought forward 2 plates of pastries. The 7th prince frowned, clearly displeased. Big brother, it's not right to bully a woman like this. The Crown Prince's face darkened. What do you mean by bully? She can perform for father. Why can't she perform for me? I could see the 7th prince open his mouth to defend me, but I stopped him with a soft word. Okay, if the Crown Prince wants to see it, then of course, it's possible. Without hesitation, I picked up the plates and began eating, my movements steady, despite the rising discomfort in my stomach. After finishing both plates, I curtsied and asked quietly, Is the Crown Prince satisfied now? He nodded, but then, as if to humiliate me further, he sneered. I didn't expect you to look so small, but eat like a pig. I smiled faintly, accepting the insult with quiet grace. Thank you for the compliment, Your Highness. Seeing that I wasn't angry seemed to bore him, and he left, leaving me to quietly simmer in the aftermath. Anaya came up to me again, this time her demeanor entirely different. Half a month from now will be my sister's hairpinning ceremony, she said sweetly, her eyes glinting with false affection. Why don't I organize it for you? I'd love to do something special for you. The Crown Prince, ever the doting sibling, added, An elder sister is like a mother, and Anaya truly cares for you. She's beautiful and kind-hearted. Their words were poison, wrapped in sweetness. As I looked at their affectionate exchange, memories of my own tragic death during my hairpinning ceremony in my past life flooded me. My heart twisted, but I kept my composure, suppressing the anger and hatred that threatened to overwhelm me. Then I'll trouble my elder sister, I said quietly, the words heavy on my tongue. Once the Crown Prince and Anaya had left, I walked, away with the 7th prince. Halfway through, I couldn't hold it in any longer. I found a quiet corner and retched until I was dizzy. The 7th prince approached, wanting to pat my back, but I quickly pulled away, avoiding his touch. He stood still for a moment, his hand dropping at his side. He sighed quietly. You really know how to endure. I wiped my mouth with a handkerchief and forced a smile. What I endure is not in vain. The nausea was still gnawing at me, and as soon as I returned to my quarters, I dismissed the maids and collapsed onto the couch. I fell asleep without meaning to, the exhaustion of the day overwhelming me. When I woke up in the evening, I found a quilt draped over me. Beside me was a small, delicate box and a dark-colored potion that had cooled down. The scent from the box told me it was some kind of herbal medicine. I opened the lid, and Israel's voice came from above, rough with concern. That medicine is good for nourishing the stomach. Have someone heat it up and drink it later. I nodded quietly, the weight of the day pressing on me. I was too tired to respond, but I felt a strange comfort knowing that, for a moment, I was cared for. The box contained an ointment to promote blood circulation and remove blood stasis. "Use this on your wrist," he instructed, his voice steady. As I lifted my sleeve, I saw the bruising where Anaya had grabbed me. The sight made my heart twist, but I raised an eyebrow, surprised. "How did you know I was injured?" His response was simple, yet knowing. "When she grabbed your wrist, I saw you frown." I froze. I hadn't expected him to notice such a small detail, but there it was. My heart began to race uncontrollably, my thoughts spinning. I cleared my throat, trying to regain some composure. To distract myself, I glanced out of the window, the moon casting its soft glow. "What a round moon. Is it the 15th tonight?" He replied, "It is the 15th. I rushed to the window, eager to see the moon more clearly. Without hesitation, he followed, his footsteps quick. "Does Second Miss wish to enjoy the moon from a better place?" he asked, catching me off guard. I looked at him, confused. A better place? Where is that? Before I could process his words, he suddenly lifted me in his arms, pulling me close. The sudden movement startled me and my body stiffened involuntarily. Memories I'd rather forget surged within me, but then, as his presence enveloped me, I smelled the cool scent of pine and bamboo. It was calming, strangely comforting. He moved swiftly, carrying me out of the window, avoiding the maids and guards outside. With a deftness that left me breathless, he scaled a large tree using his lightness kung fu. I closed my eyes tightly, afraid of being caught, and pressed my hand to my mouth to stifle the scream that threatened to escape. His voice, warm with amusement, reached my ears. "If Second Miss doesn't open her eyes, how can she enjoy the moon?" I hesitated, then slowly opened my eyes, just a sliver at first. The sight before me took my breath away. The entire palace stretched out below us, and the moon seemed so close I felt I could touch it. Overcome by the beauty of the moment, I let my eyes widen and whispered, "It's so beautiful." He looked at me, his gaze soft. "Yes, it is beautiful." Then clearing his throat, he shared a quiet memory. "In my hometown there is a saying, when looking at the moon, 'The moon is beautiful tonight.' Curious, I asked, 'What does it mean?' He didn't answer right away. Instead, he simply said, 'Say it. Maybe all your wishes will come true.' I didn't question him. My voice was barely a whisper as I spoke the words to the moon. 'The moon is beautiful tonight.' He murmured beside me, 'Yes. The wind is gentle too.' The night seemed to hold its breath. But in that moment of peace, I didn't realize the storm that was brewing. Not long after, Anaya sent someone to harm me. A maid I had brought from home slipped an unknown powder into my washing basin. I looked at her without a flicker of emotion, my voice calm as I said, "If that's the case, this basin of water is for you to wash with." The maid's eyes widened in horror. She stammered, pleading with me. I was wrong. Please spare me." I sighed softly. People don't know pain until it hits them personally. I didn't soften my heart. I had the other two maids hold her down, forcing her to wash her face with the tainted water. Soon, her face began to blister and swell, her skin reddening. Anaya had been so eager to disfigure me, but it seemed I had turned the tables. I rolled, my eyes, a flicker of malice in my heart. But I would not let Anaya off so easily. I took the maid to the imperial concubine, and with tears in my eyes, I cried injustice. The imperial concubine, all too eager to see me wronged, followed me to the empress's sleeping quarters, wailing for justice. "Oh, Empress, please uphold justice. If anything happens to the county princess in my palace, how could I possibly..." Take responsibility? There was no trace of the imperial concubine's usual airs, only desperation. The door to the Empress's sleeping quarters opened, but it wasn't the Empress who stepped out. It was the Emperor, his face clouded with fury. He barked. "Tell me what exactly has happened." The imperial concubine explained the matter in great detail, tears falling freely as she spoke. She pulled out a handkerchief and wiped her face, her voice trembling. "The crown princess and county princess are sisters, usually on good terms. I can't understand why she would do this. She must have been instructed by someone." The Empress sat on one side, her anger barely contained. "What do you mean by that?" The Emperor's frown deepened as he turned to face me. "Young lady of the Shen family, do you have anything to say?" I hesitated, then bowed my head. My voice was small, barely above a whisper, as I murmured, "Your Majesty is wise. It's my fault. I made the crown prince and my elder sister unhappy. And that's why all these things have happened. It's all my fault." My evasiveness only seemed to raise suspicion. The Emperor's eyes narrowed, and he ordered me to tell the truth. I took the opportunity to speak of the crown prince forcing me to eat pastries, my voice growing choked with emotion. "I know I am guilty, and I've offended the crown prince and crown princess, but please, Your Majesty, I don't believe my crime deserves death. Please spare my life." The Emperor's teeth ground together, his anger palpable. "Empress, this is the good son you raised?" The Empress, pale-faced, knelt, admitting her failure. The Emperor sighed deeply. "Young lady of the Shen family, I will thoroughly investigate this matter and give you an explanation." But in the end, he relented. He found a maid to take the blame, sweeping the truth under the rug. It didn't end there, though. I had already sent word outside the palace, and within 2 days, rumors began to spread throughout the capital. It was said that the crown prince had been furious with the crown princess, though everyone praised their beautiful relationship. But somehow, the story twisted, and people whispered that the crown princess's younger sister had caused the crown prince distress. The rumors grew more intense, until it was said that the crown princess, consumed by jealousy, had sent someone to disfigure her sister. The capital buzzed with gossip. And soon, even in the court, ministers began to impeach the crown prince. The emperor, initially eager to let the matter die down, found himself caught in the web of the scandal. The crown prince, however, only made things worse when he scolded those who had impeached him. The storm I had set in motion was far from over. The emperor was furious. Without hesitation, he confined the crown prince, blaming him for the entire mess. The crown prince, in turn, pointed his fingers at Anaya, and their once close relationship began to sour. Anaya came to me, her face desperate, asking for help in explaining the situation, but I feigned illness and avoided her. At that moment, I was sitting across from the 7th prince, playing chess. He moved a black piece, then looked up at me, his eyes glinting with amusement. "Spreading rumors is a brilliant move, Angelina," he said, noting my gaze. He smiled slightly, adding, "May I call you that?" I pursed my lips, unsure. "Yes," I replied, and he chuckled softly, clearly pleased. "Tell me, Angelina," he continued, "what do you plan to do next?" I thought of the flood in Lingyan from my past life, and without hesitation, I dropped a white piece on the board, symbolizing the flood. "I hope your highness will do his best," I said quietly. In my previous life, when the flood devastated Lingnan, the emperor sent the crown prince to oversee disaster relief, but he had embezzled funds, filling his own pockets while turning away refugees, even calling them rioters and punishing them. The people had suffered immensely. In this life, The emperor hoped to give the crown prince a chance to make amends, sending him once again to provide disaster relief. However, the seventh prince had already secretly gathered evidence of the crown prince's corruption, and when the emperor found out, he was devastated. He stripped the crown prince of all his powers and confined him to the East Palace to reflect on his mistakes. The seventh prince's actions won him the support of the people, and his reputation grew even stronger. When Israel brought me the news, I was tending to my flowers and plants. He couldn't help but be sarcastic. Second Miss is truly dedicated to the seventh prince. I smiled, unbothered. What dedication? It's just a matter of mutual benefit. I help him gain power, and he helps me take revenge. He casually remarked, "If you want revenge, I can help you. I can secretly kidnap Anaya for you. After all, no one among the hidden guards is better at martial arts than I am." I laughed, amused by his audacity. He didn't even call her the eldest miss anymore. "Killing her would be too easy," I replied, my voice cold. "Anaya has always been so proud, but I'll crush that pride little by little, torture her until she understands. Only then will I feel that I've paid her back for the pain she's caused me in this life, and in all the others." For a moment, he was silent, and I felt a pang of unease. "If I die," he asked suddenly, his voice soft, "will Second Miss take revenge for me too?" A panic surged in my chest. "Israel, you won't die." He smiled, as clear and bright as the wind and the moon. "Naturally I won't." After the disaster relief matter was settled, my hairpin ceremony was next on the agenda. I stood in front of the bronze mirror, looking at my reflection. "Israel, am I beautiful?" I asked quietly. He smiled. "Beautiful." I raised my head, reaching my hand toward him. "Israel, have you prepared a gift for my hairpin ceremony?" He looked taken aback and spread his hands apologetically. "Sorry, I didn't know I was supposed to prepare a gift." I tried to suppress the disappointment that stirred in my heart, but I simply pouted. "Forget it. I didn't expect you to give me a gift anyway." As a county princess, I was used to these things, but this hairpin ceremony was even more elaborate than the last. After several rounds of drinking, Anaya stood and addressed the guests, thanking them for attending my ceremony. "I've prepared blessings in the National Temple. Let us all go together," she announced. Then she grabbed my hand, her voice dripping with sweetness. "Sister, can you go last with me?" I lowered my gaze, a smile playing on my lips. "Okay." She purposely delayed until nearly everyone had left. When it was finally just the two of us, we got into the carriage. As it rolled down a secluded path, she suddenly turned to me, her face twisted with fury. "Angelina," she hissed, "why can't you just learn to be obedient? Why can't you let yourself be trampled under my feet like you always should have?" I met her gaze, unwavering. "Because I took away your love?" I asked calmly. "But from childhood to now, you've seen how Father treats you and how he treats me. When did I ever take away your love?" Her face contorted with madness. "Don't you understand? Love doesn't matter. What I hate most is your face, the face that looks so much like Mother's." She laughed bitterly. "You think Father doesn't care for you. He loves you most of all. He doesn't want you to suffer, so he never forced you to learn music, chess, calligraphy, and painting. He wants to find you a good marriage. But for me, he will marry me to that foolish crown prince." Without even blinking, a dark laugh escaped me. "So, Father is such a failure, isn't he? Both of his daughters believe the other is the favorite." I didn't feel the sting of her words anymore, but Anaya smiled, a strange twisted expression. "You'll die soon," she said with a cold laugh. Before I could react, a sharp whistle rang out, followed by the sound of bandits attacking. Anaya leaned close, her voice a venomous whisper. "These bandits are all mine, and they're stronger than you think." My heart raced as I realized the trap she had set. The night was just beginning, and so was my fight for survival. "I hope my younger sister enjoys them," she said, her voice dripping with malice, before feigning fear and rushing out of the sedan chair, crying for help. I immediately jumped out, heart pounding in my chest. The sounds of the guards I'd brought clashing with bandits reached my ears. "Israel!" I screamed. He arrived swiftly, leading a group of hidden guards sent by the Seventh Prince, surrounding the bandits with precision. It didn't take long before the bandits were captured. Anaya, realizing her defeat, collapsed to the ground, muttering to herself in disbelief. How could this be? It shouldn't be like this. How could I lose? I can't lose. Her voice quivered, with rage. I stood above her, cold and composed. The winner is the king, and the loser is the bandit. My dear elder sister, admit your defeat. Her eyes burned with unwillingness, and she screamed, "No, I haven't lost. How could I lose to you? How could I lose?" In a frenzy, she pulled out her hairpin and lunged at me. "Die!" she shouted. I was too close to dodge. Before I could react, two voices called out at the same time. "Be careful, second miss." Suddenly, I felt Israel throw himself between us, pushing me to the ground. My hands landed on his back, and they were soaked, wet with blood. I gasped, panic seizing me. "Israel, how are you? Are you okay? Don't scare me." Anaya's crazed laughter echoed around us. "How could it be okay? That hairpin is poisoned. There's no antidote." I felt the world crumble around me. I looked at Israel, my heart shattering. "Those who are kind to you deserve to die. You deserve to die," Anaya hissed. Israel struggled to sit up, a pained smile on his face. "Second miss, don't cry. Don't listen to her. You're the best person in the world and deserve all the love in the world. I would die for you." Tears filled my eyes as I shook my head. "Israel, don't die. I'll find a doctor. I'll find the best doctor in the world. He'll save you. He will." Israel wiped my tears gently, his voice soft but reassuring. "Second miss, don't be sad. I'm fine. I just need to go home." As if to prove it, he reached inside his shirt and pulled out something, a bamboo hairpin, carefully crafted by his own hands. I took it from him, unable to hold back the flood of tears. It was the most beautiful thing he had ever made for me. But then his breath faltered, and he collapsed in my arms. "Israel?" "No," I whispered as he fell silent in my arms. I gently laid him down, and with a cold fury building within me, I turned to face Anaya. She sat there, trembling with fear, as I walked toward her step by step. "Don't come near me," she shrieked. "If you kill me, Father will never forgive you. He'll make sure you pay." I smiled darkly. "Do you think I care about them anymore?" Christopher tried to intervene, his voice filled with concern. "Your hands aren't for killing." I turned to him, calm and steady. "You once told me it was because Anaya saved you when you were young that you would do anything for her. Is that right?" He hesitated, confusion flickering in his eyes. You came back?" I nodded, my voice cold as ice. "When I was young, I saved a beggar. I had nothing, but I couldn't ignore his suffering. I gave him half of the bread I had, even though it wasn't enough for me. Do you remember him, Christopher?" His face went pale as the truth settled in. "So, the girl back then was you?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. "Do you still want to stop me now?" He remained silent and stepped aside, defeated. I walked past him without a second glance, my heart hardening. Behind me, I heard the sounds of battle as the hidden guards clashed with Anaya's remaining forces. I looked at Anaya, her face twisted with terror, and smiled brightly. "Don't worry, elder sister," I said sweetly. "How could I possibly kill you directly? No. I'll make sure you suffer like you made others suffer. I'll torture you as you've tortured so many, especially Israel. Only then will I feel satisfied." I stepped forward, the dagger in my hand gleaming in the dim light. "Let's start with what you're most proud of." I didn't hesitate. The blade sliced through her skin, the blood splattering across my face, staining it with a vivid red. I continued to cut, each wound a reminder of all the pain she had caused. It wasn't until the seventh prince arrived that I finally stopped. "Angelina, enough," he said, his voice firm but gentle. I glanced at him, then turned back to Anaya, my smile cold. "This is just the beginning." He stepped forward, gripping my hand, and whispered, "The crown prince has fallen. I can bring her back to you, and you can deal with her as you please." I looked at him, searching his eyes for any sign of dishonesty. When I saw none, I let go of the dagger, my hand shaking with rage. I threw the dagger aside, and my gaze hardened as I turned toward Anaya, who now looked like a cornered animal. "I will torture you slowly, make you suffer like you made Israel suffer." Turning around, I saw Christopher lying on the ground, gravely injured. His eyes, full of guilt and regret, stared at me one last time. "Christopher," I whispered softly, "why was it Israel who died, and not you? Why are you still here?" He coughed up blood, a final tear slipping down his face before his eyes dimmed. "I will never forgive you," I spat. "Go and die quickly." With a final breath, he died in front of me. I took Israel's lifeless body in my arms and buried him, with the care he deserved. Anaya was locked away in a dark place, where she endured a slow, agonizing death, her flesh carved away piece by piece. For 3 long years, she held on, each day a testament to her suffering. When Father learned of her death, his hair turned white overnight. He applied for retirement, hoping to return to our hometown. He came to see me before he left, but I couldn't bring myself to face him. In the 4th year of King Li's reign, the 7th prince ascended the throne. He found me and, with a solemn expression, asked, "Angelina, I still lack a queen. Will you join me?" I shook my head gently. "Your Majesty, you can find someone better. I am not a good match." He smiled, a bittersweet expression on his face. A lie. I didn't expect to become the ruler of this world, only to find that I am not even as important as a hidden guard. I can't get the heart of the one I love. I looked at him in confusion, and he explained softly. "The night the crown prince tried to force-feed you pastry, I took medicine to find you. You were asleep, but when I went back that night, I saw him holding you up a tree. You were happy. That's when I knew. I knew you loved him." I smiled, bidding him farewell. I never married. When I reached 70, I felt my time was near. I took the bamboo hairpin Israel had given me, now worn but cherished, and placed it in my hair one last time. With a peaceful smile, I lay down, closed my eyes, and drifted into sleep. But I woke in an unfamiliar place, in a classroom of sorts, where I saw him, my love, still the same carefree look on his face. I walked up to him, my heart racing. "Hello, I'm Angelina," I said, my voice soft. "This time, it's my turn to meet you. If you like this story, hit the like button and Subscribe for more stories like these only at StoryTimes.